So, Mum was inspired by the quilt on my bed to start her own. This is the fabric she's based all the other colour choices around. For this quilt, we would need 30 fat quarters. So, out came the stash, and slowly we minimised them down to the colours that we thought worked really well with the original flower piece that she had found. For this quilt, we have a big mix of colours. The first thing we had to do after choosing our colours was some ironing. We're using a hot dry iron to take out all the creases from these fat quarters being folded up for who knows long in our stash. We are all ironed out. We have noticed with ironing them that there is a big variation between your fat quarters and your fat flats, just between the brands that you purchase. All of them will have written on them what size they are, but we've had ones that have a side seam that's as small as 45 centimetres, which is just under 18 inches, all the way up to ones that are, their smallest cut is 50 centimetres, which is about 23, 24 inches. So there is definitely a variation. So the first thing we're going to need to do is make all our squares the same size. Our first cuts that we are going to do is going to be turning our fat quarters into a 17 by 17 inch square. So the scrap piece we're going to keep either for the scrap box or putting a border on. And now we have our 17 by 17 inch square to start with. From our 17 by 17 inch square, we are going to create two rectangles and a square. Now you can make these what size you want to. You can work out the maths and make the decision that you want. So as long as every panel panel of fabric you have, you cut exactly
the same.
Exactly the same. Two rectangles and a square. So the first thing we'll do is cut our long rectangle, and then we will cut our short one to turn this panel into a square. As I said, you can choose whatever measurements you want to create that, or if you want to change that up to being 3 rectangles, you can do that. But we're going to go for a long rectangle, a short rectangle, that's then going to create a square. So for us to make our life easier, we're going to do the width of our ruler down the long length. Then once we've cut that, we're again going to do the width of our ruler down the short length, and that will give us our square in the middle. The only thing you'll know is when you do your square to your short rectangle, it will be half an inch shorter than your longer rectangle. So you'll just need to trim up that half an inch off the longer rectangle because of your seam allowance. So as you can see there, we have our 3 pieces. We've got our square, our short rectangle, and our long rectangle. We're going to do that same cut to all 30 pieces. So we have cut all 30 squares up. But if you were making your own one at this stage, you could cut some of these panels up again. If you would like, you just keep them like this one. You could do a slice here or a slice that way. You could even, we talked about maybe slicing this on the triangle. So all of those things are possible at this point, depending on how complicated you want to make your design. The main thing is if you do that, you need to keep in mind that you will lose a ½ an inch for each cut that you make within your seams. For instance, if you put, say, a cut in here, straight up and down here, you would lose a ½ an inch this way, which would mean you would need to trim this one up a ½ an inch. But yeah, so many possibilities and just a simple way of being able to create your own design. The next step will be mixing these all up so that we've got different colours matching, different colours all next to each other to make our square. This is what it would be like if we randomly placed the fabrics all out, which is how a lot of quilters like to do this style of patterns. But we would prefer our colours to be a little bit more mixed up, as within this way with our blues and our pinks all in one area and our greens and purples in a different area. So we're going to spend some time mixing this up quite a bit. Alright, so we have finished moving all the colours around. We've also twisted some of our blocks sideways and swapped panels over just to give a bit more variation in the designs of the blocks themselves, so that we've got less patterns going on. Now we're ready to sew up. So we will take I always say to everybody at this point, take a picture of it on your phone, because it's very easy for you to get mixed up and confused, especially when we don't have a design board to stick it on. We are using the garage floor. So we're going to take a picture. We're going to start with block 1 in the top left corner and work our way across. So I'm just going to explain the sewing process. This is pretty simple. Basically we are sewing these two together first with our 1/4 inch seam allowance down there. Alright, so we have sewn those two pieces together. We've ironed our seams one direction. Our next step is to sew this one right sides together on the top, and again with our 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we will iron it. So that's what the block looks like once we've done both of our seams, and the last thing we need to do is just trim this edge to square it all back up. So my mum got her new sewing machine out and started zipping through all the blocks for this quilt.